Think about how your stomach feels in the morning, before coffee, before food, in that first quiet hour. For many people over 60, something has shifted. A fullness that was not there a decade ago. A heaviness that does not fully clear by noon. A belly that feels slower, heavier, more resistant than it used to, even when eating carefully. Most people who describe this have already tried the standard advice. More fiber, more water, a probiotic. And things have improved. Partially, temporarily, but never quite resolved in the way they expected. Today, I want to explain why. Because there is a specific mechanism quietly changing in the gut after 60. And until it is addressed directly, most of the standard interventions are working around the real problem rather than at it. And then I am going to walk through 5 oils, ranked by how directly they address that mechanism. Here is the core of what most digestive health conversations for older adults miss. After 60, often beginning in the mid-50s, the body produces less bile. Bile is a digestive fluid made by the liver, stored in the gallbladder, and released into the small intestine when fat arrives. Its primary job is to break dietary fat into tiny droplets that the intestinal wall can absorb. But bile does not only process fat. It stimulates the muscular contractions that keep material moving through the gut. It suppresses the wrong kind of bacterial growth, and it plays a role in how fat-soluble waste, including cholesterol, gets cleared from the system. When bile production is sufficient, digestion flows. When it slows, and it does, gradually, as part of aging, several things happen simultaneously. Fat is not broken down completely. Residues move more slowly through the intestine. The gut environment shifts in ways that produce gas, bloating, and that particular heaviness people describe as the gut feeling full of something it cannot release. Here's the part that surprises most people. Bile acts as a natural laxative. It stimulates the rhythmic contractions of the intestinal wall, called peristalsis, that move material through. It maintains a gut environment that does not favor excessive fermentation. When bile production decreases, even modestly and gradually, all 3 of the most common digestive complaints in older adults, persistent bloating, abdominal heaviness, and sluggish transit, can emerge together and persist even when the person is trying hard. That is the root, and most interventions do not address it. Fiber matters. Hydration matters. Probiotics have a meaningful role in gut health. I am not dismissing any of these, but here is the honest limitation. Fiber adds bulk and helps move things along, but fiber does not stimulate bile production. It does not address the mechanism that has slowed. If the system that breaks down fat and processes residues is working at reduced capacity, adding more roughage increases the volume without clearing the underlying bottleneck. Water is similarly essential and genuinely helpful for transit, but not a bile stimulant. Probiotics introduce beneficial bacterial cultures into the gut environment. But if that environment is producing insufficient bile, if fat residues are sitting longer than they should, the probiotic may have limited room to work. You are changing the microbiome without addressing what changed the environment in the first place. What produces a qualitatively different response, in clinical observation and in the published literature, are interventions that target bile production and gut motility directly. That is the framework behind this ranking. One more piece of context before the oils, because it explains the mechanism behind why they work. Fat arriving in the small intestine is one of the most powerful natural triggers for bile release. Intestinal cells detect it and send a hormonal signal that tells the gallbladder to contract and release its stored bile. This means that the right oils, taken at the right time, can serve as a direct physiological prompt to a system that has grown quieter with age. Not a shortcut, a coherent biological signal that the body's own mechanisms are designed to respond to. That is the principle behind the ranking that follows. Oil number 5, black seed oil. Black seed oil, Nigella sativa, has a genuine research base and a long history in traditional medicine. It reduces intestinal inflammation, provides antioxidant protection, and supports the gut lining itself. For patients dealing with chronic gut irritation, it is genuinely useful as a supportive element. Where it falls short for this specific purpose, black seed oil is not a meaningful bile stimulant. It does not accelerate intestinal transit significantly and does not address the fat processing bottleneck directly. It is best categorized as a maintenance oil, protecting and calming the gut environment, rather than a mechanism corrector. If you are already using it, it may be providing real value. For the specific goal of addressing bile-related gut slowdown, it sits at the base of this ranking for a reason. Oil number 4, flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil is the most underestimated option on this list. Most people think of it in terms of omega-3 fatty acids, and that is accurate. But what flaxseed oil does specifically in the gut is often overlooked. It lubricates the intestinal wall. It coats and helps protect the mucosal lining, which matters particularly when that lining has been dealing with low-grade inflammation and impaired fat processing over time. It also has a consistent, if modest, effect on bowel transit. People who take flaxseed oil in the morning before eating, not with food, often describe more regular, more comfortable bowel movements within 2 to 3 weeks. Why does it rank fourth rather than higher? Its bile-stimulating effect is indirect and modest. Its primary action is at the gut wall level, repairing the environment and reducing friction, rather than triggering the bile cascade directly. But it addresses a piece of the problem that the higher-ranked oils do not cover as directly. Think of it as preparing the ground, restoring the mucosal surface so that everything else can work in a healthier environment. 1 teaspoon taken in the morning before eating, on its own, without food. This is the timing that produces the most consistent results. Oil number 3, MCT oil. MCT oil, medium-chain triglycerides, is where the ranking gets meaningfully different. Long-chain fatty acids require substantial bile emulsification before the intestinal wall can absorb them. Medium-chain triglycerides bypass much of this process. They are absorbed more directly and transported to the liver more quickly through a faster metabolic pathway. That rapid transit to the liver triggers a response. The liver receives a signal that fat is being actively processed and increases bile acid output accordingly. For many people, this effect is perceptible within days of consistent use, not weeks. MCT oil also supports intestinal motility through its own mechanisms, independent of bile. It moves things. The important practical note: start small. MCT oil on an empty stomach in larger quantities than the body is accustomed to can cause significant cramping and loose stools. Not dangerous, but uncomfortable enough that most people stop before they see the benefit. Begin with half a teaspoon. Build slowly toward 1 tablespoon over 2 weeks. It ranks third because its effects, while real and relatively fast-acting, require an adaptation period and are more intense than sustained compared to the top 2 options. Oil number 2, virgin coconut oil. Coconut oil ranks second for a reason that goes beyond bile stimulation, and it comes down to one compound: lauric acid. Lauric acid makes up roughly half the fat in high-quality virgin coconut oil. In the gut, it appears to disrupt biofilms, organized colonies of bacteria that can adhere to the intestinal wall and interfere with normal motility and function. This is separate from the bile stimulation picture, but directly relevant to the sluggish gut experience. If the intestinal wall is carrying biofilm buildup, motility suffers regardless of what else you do. Virgin coconut oil also has documented effects on gut motility through its own distinct mechanism, the muscular contraction of the intestinal wall, and mild antimicrobial properties in a gut environment where fermentation has been occurring more than it should. The important distinction: virgin, unrefined, cold-pressed coconut oil. Refined coconut oil, marketed as light or odorless, typically in clear bottles, has been processed in ways that alter or remove the lauric acid content. It is not the same product. The specific compounds that produce the effects described here are in the unrefined version. Why does it not rank first? Its bile-stimulating effect, while present, is less consistent and less sustained than the oil above it. It covers the biofilm and motility pieces excellently. The bile piece, less so. Oil 1, extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil ranks first, and the reason is specific enough to be worth explaining carefully. Olive oil is rich in oleic acid, an omega-9 fatty acid that does something very specific when it reaches the small intestine. It triggers the release of cholecystokinin, the hormone that signals the gallbladder to contract and release bile. This is a well-documented, reproducible effect. What makes it particularly relevant here is its duration. The bile-stimulating response from oleic acid is not a spike that fades quickly. It extends over several hours. A morning dose creates a window of enhanced bile activity that covers a substantial portion of the digestive load for that day. The research behind olive oil and gallbladder function, intestinal transit, and gut microbiome diversity is not marginal. Regular extra virgin olive oil use is consistently associated with improved transit, reduced bloating, greater microbial diversity, and lower markers of intestinal inflammation. The details matter significantly here. 2 tablespoons in the morning before eating, not poured on toast, not added to eggs, not used to cook. taken directly from a spoon on an empty stomach. This is the timing that allows the oleic acid to reach the small intestine and trigger the hormonal cascade without competing against a large food volume. Consistently for 30 days. The effects on bile flow, on motility, and on the bacterial environment accumulate over weeks, not days. What most people notice in the first week is a shift in bowel pattern. In the second and third weeks, bloating typically begins to change. By the end of a month, the cumulative benefit becomes clearly perceptible. Quality matters. Extra virgin is a chemical standard, not a marketing label. It means the oil has been cold pressed without heat treatment and meets specific thresholds for oleic acid and polyphenol content. Refined olive oil, labeled simply olive oil or marketed as light, has been processed in ways that significantly reduce the active compounds. Look for extra virgin, cold pressed, with a harvest date if possible. If the bottle does not tell you when the olives were pressed, that itself is useful information. Here is how to structure these oils into a simple daily approach. The foundation: 2 tablespoons of quality extra virgin olive oil every morning before any food. This is the anchor. Everything else builds around it. The afternoon edition: 1 teaspoon of flaxseed oil, or, if well tolerated, MCT oil between lunch and dinner. This adds a second activation window and addresses the gut wall lubrication and fat oxidation pieces that olive oil does not cover as directly. If new to MCT, begin with half a teaspoon and build slowly. Flaxseed oil is gentler and can be introduced more immediately. The rotation: virgin coconut oil 2 to 3 times per week, either replacing or accompanying the morning olive oil in a small quantity, brings the motility and biofilm support into the picture. 4 mistakes that undermine results even when the oils are right. Taking the oil with a heavy meal. The bile-stimulating effect depends on the oil reaching the small intestine without competing against large food volume. Morning on an empty stomach is the timing that matters. Taking fiber at the same time. Certain fibers bind to fatty acids. Separate fiber supplements from your morning oil by at least 1 hour, using lower quality refined oils. The chemical profile of a refined product is not the same as an unrefined one. This is the detail most people skip. The difference in outcome is real. And most importantly, do not adjust or stop any prescribed medications based on dietary changes without discussing this with your physician. If you take medications affecting gallbladder or liver function, that conversation is worth having before beginning. Your body is not broken. The bloating, the heaviness, the gut that no longer responds the way it used to, these are the result of a system producing fewer of the compounds it needs to function at its former level. A system that is under-supported in a specific way can in many cases be meaningfully supported. That is what these oils do when used correctly. They provide a physiological signal. They give the liver and gallbladder a reason to activate. They lubricate a gut wall that has become less efficient. They support the bacterial environment that relies on proper fat digestion to stay in balance. The 30-day practice is straightforward. 2 tablespoons of quality extra virgin olive oil every morning before you eat. Keep a simple note, not a formal log, just a note, about how your mornings feel at the beginning versus the end of the month. What the bloating does. What your transit looks like. What your energy is like by mid-morning. The change that most people notice is worth paying attention to. If this was useful, share it with someone you know who has been dealing with these same changes and has not found answers that make sense. And if you want more honest, practical health conversations built specifically for adults over 60, subscribe to this channel. We are here every week. Take good care, and I will see you in the next one.